The scientific consensus.
Strong scientific consensus.
The overwhelming, near unanimous scientific consensus.
What happened
consensus.
Here? This is the problem with the consensus.
The consensus.
Okay. But what should matter?
Don't matter.
What
matters
should matter?
is the consensus.
What is it with our seemingly blind obsession with scientific consensus? And is it a good thing? Hand washing. It's just about the first thing we hear from doctors nowadays as one of, if not the best way to remove germs, avoid getting sick, and prevent the spread of germs to others. But as some of you might already know, hand washing was not always scientific consensus.
In medicine in particular, it's very surprising that there was so much resistance to the idea of hand washing.
In the mid-19th century, Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian physician, was working in a Vienna hospital where he observed a situation where healthy women would go into the hospital to have a baby, and almost 1 out of every 5 died from childbed fever, compared to a significantly lower mortality rate in the adjacent midwife-led ward. Intrigued by this disparity, Semmelweis noticed that doctors and medical students often went from performing autopsies in one part of the hospital to delivering babies in the ward next door without washing their hands. He hypothesized that hand washing could prevent the transmission of harmful germs, and when he implemented a strict hand washing policy among doctors and physicians at his hospital, the mortality rate in the maternity ward dropped from 18% to about 1%. And the members of the medical community were extremely grateful for the contributions of Dr. Semmelweis. And we all know now to wash our hands, is what I wish I could say, but that's not how this story ends.
You know, if you try to go against authority and convention, you can run into and make some enemies.
And enemies he made. The medical community, doctors, felt that their professional status was being challenged, undermined, and instead of instituting changes, they launched a full-scale smear campaign against Semmelweis, spreading false rumors about his credibility and sanity until he was discredited and ultimately exiled from his profession entirely. And after a nervous breakdown in 1865, he was committed to an asylum where he died a pariah at the age of 47. I tell this story not as an attack against the medical community as a whole, or to say that contrarian viewpoints are always more valid than the scientific consensus, but rather to highlight the alarming parallels and the flawed ways in which I think the modern establishment scientific and medical community arrives at and enforces consensus. To dissect this topic, I think we first have to start by talking about the series of social experiments conducted by psychologist Solomon Asch in the 1950s, in which a volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. But what he doesn't know is that the experiment is actually about group conformity and that the other participants are all actors.
The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length.
The actors have all been told to match the wrong lines, and the volunteer, the real subject, will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer.
3.
3.
3.
Over the course of the trials, on average, about 1/3 of the participants who were placed in this situation went along and conformed with the clearly incorrect majority on the critical trials, and about 75% of participants conformed at least once.
The Asch experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again. We will conform to the group. Again, we're very social creatures. We're very much aware of what the people around us think. We want to be liked. We don't want to be seen to rock the boat, so we will go along with the group, even if we don't believe what people are saying.
I don't know what I would have done. I really like to say that I'd be that rogue maverick, but I don't know. I'm human after all. But now imagine a scenario where each of those participants are scientists, and the 3 lines represent a possible result of a research study meant to validate or invalidate the efficacy of, say, a new drug, except this time around, everyone has been paid and strongly incentivized to pick a specific line. That's how modern science, specifically a lot of pharmaceutical research trials, arrives at consensus. Vinay Prasad, a practicing hematologist, oncologist, and professor at the University of California, San Francisco, and friend of the show, talks about the perverse incentives that have infected the scientific community.
The problem isn't that we don't know what are the right ways to answer the questions. We do know the right ways, but the system has flawed incentives, which is that the more you can get people to believe your thing is helping people, the more you can make money.
The National Institutes of Health, the NIH, is the primary agency of the United States government responsible for biomedical and public health research. Its purported mission is to seek fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living systems and the application of that knowledge to enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. But to Prasad's point, it was revealed by Adam Andrzejewski of Open the Books, a public watchdog group, that NIH leadership and 2,400 of its scientists have collected $1.4 billion worth of secret third-party royalties from pharmaceutical companies and other for-profit enterprises over the past 12 years.
Every single one of those individual third-party royalty payments has the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Anthony Fauci, the former director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and the highest paid federal bureaucrat, received 23 royalty payments over that period of time. Francis Collins, NIH director from 2009 to 2021, received 14 payments. Clifford Lane, Fauci's deputy at the NIAID, received 8 payments. But as it currently stands, the NIH has defied the Federal Freedom of Information Act law, so we actually don't know who the royalty payments are from and how much was paid.
We've been asking you, and you refuse to answer, whether anybody on the vaccine committees gets royalties from the pharmaceutical companies. I asked you last time, and what was your response? We don't have to tell you.
Right.
We've demanded them through Freedom of Information Act, and what have you said? We're not going to tell you.
Andrzejewski calls it a conflict of interest. Rand Paul implied pretty much outright corruption. I would call it a crime. Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine Comirnaty was developed from technology licensed from the NIH, which means that NIH researchers who supposedly work on behalf of the people in search of scientific truth can actually personally profit from the sale of that product.
NIH is receiving tens of millions of dollars from Pfizer on those royalty payments.
Perhaps not coincidentally, in an op-ed in the Washington Post, a former Harvard Medical School professor warned that a careful reading of the protocols used in the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccine trials revealed that the trials were designed to succeed from the start, which would likely overstate their effectiveness, and that these protocols seem designed to get a drug on the market sooner rather than later on a timeline arguably based more on politics than public health. In 2022, Pfizer generated nearly $38 billion in revenue from the sale of its COVID-19 vaccine, which is almost 40% of the company's total revenue. And now, if we can try to set aside the vaccine culture wars for a second, I hope you can see the dangers here. Foundationally, through the ASH experiments, we understand the human desire to socially conform, but layered on top of that, we have also legalized and legitimized a system which consensus is established and enforced in the scientific community through a series of lucrative yet secret financial arrangements completely hidden from the public. And if that doesn't do it, there are now laws on the books that actually forbids doctors to share information that is, quote, contradicted by contemporary scientific consensus, a real law that was signed by Governor Newsom in California and went into effect January 1st of this year. So what is the solution?
We've demanded them through Freedom of Information Act, and what have you said? We're not going to tell you. But I tell you this, when we get in charge, we're going to change the rules, and you will have to divulge where you get your royalties from what companies, and if anybody in the committee has a conflict of interest, we're going to learn about it. I promise you that.
To me, transparency in public health should be a bipartisan issue. So I challenge Senator Rand Paul and his colleagues. If you are willing to engage in political theater with Dr. Fauci, back it up with action. More than just a sternly worded letter. No, I'm talking about actual legislative change, demanding transparency of payments between the public and private sector, and independence between public-serving scientists and profit-maximizing corporations. If not, the only possible outcome is a continued erosion in public trust and confidence in what they are calling scientific consensus, which according to Pew Research has dropped precipitously since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020. Just a few weeks ago, President Joe Biden announced his new pick to head the NIH, Dr. Monica Bertagnolli, and perhaps not surprising at this point, according to disclosures filed with Open Payments, she received $247 million in research funding from Pfizer from 2016 to 2021, which should raise major red flags about whether she would be able to serve the public independently. So honestly, my problem is not with science or the scientific method or even the value of scientific consensus. My problem is with the degree in which I see scientific consensus being corrupted by opaque financial arrangements hidden from the public and then enforced through laws and statutes that forbids doctors and scientists from challenging consensus. So I'd implore everyone to seriously consider the long-term dangers presented by a scientific consensus that has seemingly been bought and paid for. My name is James Lee. Thank you for watching Breaking Points Beyond the Headlines. What are your thoughts and opinions? Please share in the comments below. Also, if you are curious and want other stories like this, please check out my YouTube channel, 5149 with James Lee. The link will be in the description below. Of course, keep on tuning into Breaking Points, and thank you for your time today.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.